So why did the Democrats lose this election this time? What is the situation and what went wrong between President Biden, Kamala Harris, and now elected President Donald Trump? That is what we are going to explore in today's video. Now, I want to start this video while everyone is still here by saying is that this video is not meant to be political, at least not in the sense that it's meant to sway anybody to vote for one side or now that the elections happened to support one side or the other. This video is going to be trying to look at the situation on a neutral perspective to really reflect about what really ended up happening during this particular election to explain what really went wrong with the Democrats. Because like it or not, at the end of the day, President Donald Trump did win the presidential elections for 2024. He won not only the elections, but he swept the popular vote. He won every single swing state. Again, like it or not, that's really the fact about what we have to work with right now at this time. And it's not even just him, but the Republicans basically took over the entirety of Congress. So obviously on the Democrat side, there was just something that maybe could have been done differently to improve the situation. And so with that being said, coming at it from a neutral perspective, because obviously we are talking about something political, but we're going to, again, try to make it neutral. That's what today's video is going to explore. So with that being said, let's just get right to this video. But as always, if you guys enjoy videos like this, like, comment, subscribe, or watch to the end to decide. And with that being said, let's get started. So by now, basically every single person probably knows the situation. President Trump won the election, or former President Trump won the election, and now he's going to be the president again, coming into for the next 4 years. And he just basically won not just the regular votes, but he also won the popular vote, and he won every single swing state, and he was able to basically get the entire Congress to now swing towards Republican. And that's what we have to work with, like it or not. But the first reason why it's really important to understand why the Democrats lost the vote, and it's so important because we have to use this to reflect on to see what could have been done differently. But the first reason why what happened was really because of President Biden dropping out midway into the elections. So this is really, really important because a lot of people looked at this situation and it was very, very clear from the start. And we already saw it in the debates in 2024. So earlier this year, when President Biden debated President Trump, or former President Trump, that he clearly was not at his full form, at least certainly not at the state that he was in back when he ran against Trump in 2020 in the very beginning. So with that in mind, the fact that he was basically over 80 years old, he was obviously not in the full shape and certainly not the full health that he once had back in the day, putting him against candidate like President Donald Trump, that's going to be a difficult battle to win. So when you kind of put it into that situation, what they really should have done is perhaps they should have ended up choosing a different candidate to represent the Democrats instead of trying to originally make it President Biden. Instead, what they should have done is picked someone else instead to run and represent the Democrats, then give them more time to actually try to run for president and also to work on gaining supporters. Then it is very, very probable to think that the election results might have swung differently, and instead maybe we would have a different president by now. But instead, what they ended up doing, which is probably a very great transition into the next point to why the Democrats lost the election, and it has to do with, and again, I don't want to put blame on anyone, but the reality is that it has to do with Kamala Harris. But even specifically putting Kamala Harris and running her as the potential next president. Now, like it or not, the polls are all statistics. These are all numbers. These are all factual things. And the idea really behind this one is that back in 2020, Kamala Harris was already not necessarily the most likable candidate. So when you put someone who already back in 2020 was not necessarily the most likable candidate to run for president in 2024, but now you kind of have a situation where, she already was the vice president for the last 4 years. And obviously we went through a lot of difficult points, such as like we all know about the increased, situation with inflation, the increased prices, the interest rates, the economy, definitely one of the largest. And it was known that, the economy was one of the biggest issues that most Americans really had to suffer through for the last 4 years. Feel free to comment anything down below if you have any comments about this, but that's what, from the consensus was that was the biggest issue. So when you have this particular situation where she already struggled, and again, I'm not saying that she was the reason why we went through inflation, but to the eyes of the American people, she is one of the reasons why we went through heavy inflation. Again, I'm not saying she is, and we're definitely going to have to touch on this issue, so definitely continue watching. But I'm saying to the eyes of the American people, she is one of the people that was in charge of why we ended up enduring what we ended up having to endure. This is not a very, very great recipe or situation to be in, because if you were already not the right representative, or if you were already not the most likable person in 2020, then I can't imagine how in 2024, after being the vice president for 4 years, that was going to basically serve to be any better. And I think that's the really important thing. It was very well known that there were a lot of Democrats that didn't support Kamala Harris. Again, just speaking factually, there was a lot of Democrats that wanted to support Harris but couldn't support Harris or didn't feel like supporting Harris back in the day. So that is really the situation that what really ended up happening, which is probably going to be a really, really great transition to talking about the other point that I just mentioned that we're now going to start to dive deep into. And it has everything to do with the economy, but even more specifically, inflation, the inflation situation that we went through. Now, I know that there's a lot of people here that have varying opinions about what caused the inflation crisis over the last 4 years. There are some people here that might be blaming President Biden and Kamala Harris for why we ended up suffering so much inflation. Then there's going to be a lot of people that may be trying to justify that the inflation situation was probably going to happen regardless of who was in power. And this video is not meant to explain why we suffered through inflation, but what this video is meant to say is that in the eyes of the American people, when you have a problem that comes up, and this isn't even just with presidents in general, but just in life in general, when you have a situation or a problem that comes up about just in life in general, it is very, very easy, whether this is in school, whether this is in the workforce, whether this is in jobs, and especially in this situation we're talking about in the world of the presidential elections or our country. The idea is that the person that is probably going to receive the most amount of blame when there's a problem that comes up are the people in charge, the people who have the most power. And in this specific circumstance, this happens to be the Democrats for the last 4 years. So this is really important to understand is that because this, again, going back, I think it's so important to make clear is that this video is not to say that the Democrats are the reason why we suffered through so much inflation, but what it is to say is that to the eyes of the American people, and you can feel free to leave your comments down below if you have any opinions about what caused the inflation situation, but it's that to the eyes of the American people, they are the ones to blame for it, because they're the ones to automatically point fingers to, because they are the ones that were in power for the last 4 years. And I think that that's really the point that's really important to communicate to this. Now, on this channel, we already talked so much about the inflation crisis situation. There are so many videos. If you guys have been here for a while, then thank you guys so much for the support. You guys know how much we've talked about the inflation situation. On another note, if you guys are brand new here, welcome. Maybe consider subscribing because we do talk a lot about the economy. And if you guys made it this far into the video, then hopefully that is something of interest. So, consider subscribing and hitting the bell if that's of interest. But that's probably going to be the big issue that we really, really have to understand what went wrong with the Democrats. I'm probably making maybe a transition to probably the final point that we really have to make to why the Democrats lost this election has to do with everything related to voter turnout. Essentially, what really ended up happening is that, and again, this is a statistic, a lot less people voted in the 2024 elections than in the 2020 elections. And it is well known historically from the last several elections that when voter turnout becomes high, typically the Democrats end up winning. Again, just like it or not, regardless of your party, that's just what history has shown. And because of that particular reason, what really went wrong with the Democrats is that there was a lot of people that believed that instead of trying to spend so much time trying to convert Republican voters, or the people that were kind of in the swing states, that were kind of, they were in debate whether they wanted to support the Democrats or the Republicans. Instead of trying to convert them over to vote for the Democrats, what they maybe should have considered doing, and again, because at this point it's already happened, what they maybe should have considered doing is just to simply put encouraging the people that would have voted for the Democrats anyway to come out and vote. And I think that that was probably the biggest issue behind it. Obviously, there's a lot of people that really didn't like either candidates. There was a lot of people that didn't like Trump or Kamala, but they basically felt that maybe because of that reason, they ended up deciding not to vote for either of them. But if the Democrats had encouraged more people to come out, it is very reasonable to think that the election results might have swung in a very, very different direction, certainly compared to what was the case in 2020. And I think these are probably going to be the main lessons to really, really take away from this particular video. Obviously, there are so many reasons and so many discussions going on right now about what went wrong in this situation, or what went wrong for the Democrats, because again, if you supported Trump, this is obviously a great thing. If you supported the Democrats, obviously I know there's a lot of people that are upset about the situation, but regardless of what it is, the idea really behind it is that these are just some things that maybe could have been done differently to sway the elections in favor of the Democrats. But of course, I'd love to hear your guys' opinion about what you guys think about this particular election. Maybe feel free to comment that down below, because there are definitely a lot of things that went wrong, and there were definitely a lot of things that we can learn from this, at least certainly on the Democrat side. And of course, that's what I would love to hear from you guys. So with that being said, if you guys made it to the end, thank you guys for watching all the way through. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, or leave a suggestion for improvements if anything, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.